Loneliness in old age is rarely loud. It does not always look like crying, asking for help, or saying, "I feel abandoned." More often, it hides inside ordinary sentences. "I'm fine. Don't worry about me. You're busy, I understand." And that is what makes it so heartbreaking. Many elderly people do not only suffer because they are alone, they suffer because they slowly begin to believe they no longer matter in the emotional life of others. Imagine spending decades raising children, loving deeply, sacrificing quietly, building a home, only to wake up one day and feel emotionally invisible inside the very world you helped create. The deepest pain of loneliness is not the absence of people. It is the absence of felt significance. And once a person feels unseen for too long, the heart does not simply become sad, it becomes silent. To understand lonely elderly people, we first have to let go of one mistaken idea. Loneliness is not just the condition of being physically alone. A person can live in a full house and still feel emotionally abandoned. An older parent may sit beside children and grandchildren, hear voices all day, and yet carry the private ache of not being truly included, needed, or understood. This is why loneliness in old age is not merely social. It is deeply psychological. It is the pain of feeling left behind while life keeps moving without you. As people age, many invisible losses happen at once. Their roles begin to fade. The worker retires. The parent is no longer needed in the same way. Friends get sick, move away, or die. The body changes, energy changes, even the speed of the world changes. Technology moves faster, conversations become shorter, homes become quieter. What disappears is not only activity, what disappears is reflected identity. For many elderly people, loneliness begins the moment they stop seeing proof that they still matter. That is why an older person may repeat stories, call more often, complain more, or become unusually sensitive. On the surface, it may seem irritating, dramatic, or dependent. But underneath there is often a deeper emotional question. Do I still exist in your emotional world? This is not attention-seeking in a shallow sense. It is the human nervous system reaching for reassurance. At every age, people need emotional validation. But in old age, that need can become more intense because so many external sources of worth have already fallen away. This also explains why some elderly people become more negative, controlling, or easily hurt. When someone feels powerless inside, they may try to regain emotional security by holding tightly to routines, opinions, or relationships. Sometimes what looks like stubbornness is actually fear. Sometimes what sounds like criticism is grief with nowhere to go. Sometimes the sentence, "You never visit me," really means I miss feeling important to someone. Loneliness can also reactivate old wounds. A person who spent life people-pleasing to earn love may feel unbearable emptiness when fewer people need them. Someone with an anxious attachment style may become more afraid of being forgotten. Someone with long-buried trauma may feel it rising again when life becomes quiet enough to hear old pain. Silence often awakens what busyness once covered, and this is the core truth. Elderly loneliness is rarely just about age. It is about meaning, attachment, identity, and the fear of becoming emotionally invisible. Human beings do not only need food, medicine, and safety. They need to feel held in someone's mind and heart. The elderly are no different. In fact, after a lifetime of giving, that need can become even more tender. So when an older person seems difficult, repetitive, clingy, or withdrawn, look deeper. Beneath the behavior, there is often a wounded sentence they do not know how to say clearly. Please remind me that I still matter. Loneliness in elderly people rarely announces itself in obvious ways. It often wears ordinary clothes and speaks in ordinary habits. It may appear as repeating the same story 5 times, keeping the television on all day, becoming overly attached to a neighbor, calling children for small reasons, or, seeming offended by things that once would not have mattered. Many families misunderstand these behaviors because they only see the surface. They think, why is mom so sensitive now? Or why does grandpa complain about everything? But very often these are not personality flaws growing worse. They are emotional signals growing louder. One common sign is overtalking. An elderly person may stretch a simple conversation into an hour, not because they have so much to say, but because connection has become scarce. When life feels empty, even a brief call can feel like sunlight in winter. Another sign is unusual irritation. A lonely older adult may react strongly to canceled visits, delayed replies, or changes in routine. What hurts them is not only the event itself, it is what the event symbolizes. To them, a late phone call can feel like proof that they are no longer a priority. A rescheduled visit can awaken the deeper fear. I am becoming easy to postpone. Some elderly people do the opposite. Instead of clinging, they withdraw. They say, I don't want to bother anyone. They stop asking. They stop sharing. They become quieter, but not because they are at peace. They become quiet because they are protecting themselves from the pain of feeling unwanted. This is where loneliness becomes dangerous. Silence can look dignified from the outside while hiding deep emotional starvation inside. Why do these patterns repeat? Because the human mind is always trying to confirm what it already fears. If an older person secretly believes they are becoming irrelevant, they may interpret neutral events through that wound. A busy child sounds dismissive. A short message feels cold. An unanswered call feels personal. This is not irrational in the simple sense. It is the psychology of attachment under threat. Once the heart expects abandonment, it begins collecting evidence for it. Real life makes this even more painful. Imagine an elderly widow who used to spend every evening talking with her husband. After he dies, the house is not merely quiet. It is psychologically unmirrored. No one notices her small thoughts, her daily routines, her passing worries, or think of a retired father whose entire identity was built around providing. When no one needs his advice, money, or strength in the same way, he may feel useless without knowing how to say it. Sometimes loneliness sounds like anger, but underneath anger is grief. Sometimes it sounds like neediness, but underneath neediness is fear. Sometimes it sounds like criticism, but underneath criticism is a desperate hope to still be emotionally reached. This is why lonely elderly people can seem trapped in patterns they themselves dislike. They may push people away, then ache when people step back. They may act cold, then feel forgotten. They may test love by making small emotional demands, not because they want conflict, but because they need reassurance. When the heart has gone too long without warmth, it starts knocking on doors in imperfect ways. Healing elderly loneliness does not begin with giving more advice. It begins with restoring emotional significance. Most older people do not need perfect words. They need to feel that their existence still lands somewhere warm. They need to feel that when they speak, someone is not merely hearing noise, but receiving a life. This is why true care is not only practical, it is relational. You can bring medicine, groceries, and money, and still leave a person starving in the place that hurts most. The need to feel emotionally remembered. The first shift is simple, but profound. Stop asking only, what do they need? And begin asking, what do they feel when no one is looking? That question changes everything. Because an elderly person may say they need nothing while quietly grieving the loss of being checked on, consulted, included, and missed. Independence is often precious to them, but emotional invisibility is painful. a person can want dignity and still long for tenderness. Those two needs are not opposites. They are both forms of respect. Real healing often starts in small, repeated moments. A patient conversation, a visit that is not rushed, asking for their opinion and truly listening. Letting them teach something, even if you already know it. Remembering a detail they mentioned before. These may seem minor, but psychologically they are powerful. They tell the nervous system, you are still here with us. You still matter. You still leave an imprint. For a lonely heart, that message can feel like oxygen. It also helps to understand that elderly people do not always need to be cheered up. Sometimes they need emotional validation more than positivity. Instead of saying, "Don't think like that," try, "I can understand why that feels painful." Instead of correcting their sadness, sit beside it for a moment. Validation does not deepen suffering, it softens shame. Many elderly people are not only sad, they are ashamed of being sad, afraid of seeming weak, demanding, or old. When someone meets their pain without impatience, a very deep kind of healing begins. There is also growth available for the elderly themselves, even in loneliness. Not the shallow growth of pretending everything is fine, but the deeper kind, learning that their worth is not over, just because their old roles have changed. A retired worker is still a person. A widowed spouse is still a heart. A parent who is less needed is still deeply valuable. Human worth does not expire when productivity does. The soul does not become smaller because the house becomes quieter. And maybe that is the truth we most need to remember. The elderly are not people waiting at the edge of life to be managed. They are entire emotional worlds carrying memories, love, regret, resilience, and invisible pain. To care for them well is not charity. It is recognition. It is saying in action and presence, your life still reaches us. Because in the end, the opposite of loneliness is not just company, it is connection. It is the felt experience of being held in someone's heart. And sometimes the most healing thing we can give an elderly person is this quiet, life-restoring message. You are not a burden. You are not forgotten. You are still deeply, irreplaceably loved.